Taehyung's jealousy explodes when he sees Jungkook and Jimin together, unaware of a secret plan that could change everything between them. "Don't touch him again," Taehyung growled, his voice trembling as he shoved Jungkook against the glass wall of the rehearsal room, the echo ringing like thunder in the hollow silence that followed. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, then steadied, too bright, too clinical, casting stark shadows across the studio floor. Jimin stood frozen a few feet away, his lips parted as if words had been torn from his mouth mid-sentence. Jungkook didn't push back. He stood still, eyes wide, breath uneven, but he didn't flinch. Instead, his gaze searched Taehyung's face, confusion blooming behind the sharp hurt in his dark eyes. The silence didn't last long. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jimin hissed, stepping forward, but Taehyung raised a hand toward him, shaking, fingers curled, as if even Jimin's presence burned. It had been building for days, maybe weeks. Taehyung hadn't meant to spiral this far, hadn't meant to let the gnawing anxiety inside him become volcanic rage. But something about the way Jungkook had smiled at Jimin that morning, soft, secretive, something about how they'd slipped away between practice sets like they shared something sacred, something Taehyung wasn't allowed to touch. It had ripped him apart. He hadn't asked questions. He hadn't waited for answers. He had only felt the crack deep in his chest grow into a chasm. Jungkook finally spoke. "You don't understand." "No," Taehyung snapped. "I see it. The way you look at him. The way you hide things. Don't treat me like I'm blind." Jimin flinched at the venom in his tone, stepping between them now with a guarded expression, hands slightly raised like a mediator in a war zone. "Tae, please, listen. You're wrong about this. Just let us. I don't need to hear your lies." Taehyung cut in, eyes flashing. "I don't want your pity, Jimin." A long pause, then Jungkook stepped forward, voice calm but tinged with something fierce underneath. "You think I'd do this to you?" he said. "You think I'd betray you, for him?" "Taehyung, everything I've done was for you." Taehyung laughed bitterly, hollow and raw. "That's rich. Planning things in the shadows. Whispering when I walk into a room. You're lying, Jungkook, and I don't know why." Jungkook's fists clenched at his sides. Jimin, caught between them, looked like he wanted to disappear. None of this was going to plan, because the truth, the one they hadn't had time to explain, was buried under layers of secrecy for a reason. The rooftop dinner reservations. The signed painting Taehyung adored. The vintage vinyl player Jungkook had tracked down across 3 cities. It was all for him. A surprise. An apology. Promise. And now the surprise was crumbling under the weight of Taehyung's fears. Outside, rain began to fall against the windows, soft at first, then harsher. Like the sky had decided to cry the tears none of them could afford to shed. Taehyung stepped back, breath ragged. "You should have just told me," he whispered. And then he was gone, slipping out of the studio like a ghost escaping its own haunt, the door swinging shut behind him with a cold metallic click. Jungkook didn't move. Neither did Jimin. The air was thick, heavy with something unspoken. Jimin finally exhaled. "This isn't how it was supposed to start." Jungkook's jaw clenched. "No," he muttered, voice low and broken. "But I'll find him. I'll make it right." But neither of them could know then just how deep the cut had gone, or how many secrets still waited in the dark corners of their hearts, hungry to be seen. "You knew he'd take it the wrong way, didn't you?" Jimin's voice was low but sharp, cutting through the empty rehearsal room like broken glass. The rain had stopped, but the tension still hung in the air. Dense, electric, the kind that settles right beneath your skin and refuses to leave. Jungkook turned to him, his face pale under the fluorescent lights, jaw tight. "You think I planned for this to happen?" "I think," Jimin said slowly, stepping closer. "You let him drown in doubt for too long. You could have told him. We could have told him. You agreed to keep it a secret?" Jungkook snapped, his voice harsher than he intended. "You said it had to be perfect. I said if we kept it a secret, it had to be flawless. Now look where we are." Silence returned, thicker this time. It settled in their lungs, their limbs. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, sweat damp and tangled from hours of practice. From stress. From guilt. I didn't think he'd... Jungkook's voice cracked slightly. I didn't think he'd explode like that. You didn't think he'd care that much. That landed like a slap. Jungkook looked away. Outside, the city buzzed on like nothing had happened. But in here, their world had tilted. What had been a carefully crafted plan? A rooftop under stars, a speech rehearsed a dozen times, a gift wrapped in hope, had now twisted into something jagged and bleeding. Jimin sighed and sat on the floor, back against the mirrored wall. You should go after him. He doesn't want to see me. That's never stopped you before. That wasn't true, not entirely. There had been times Jungkook had hesitated, had waited too long. Times when silence had built fences between them. But never like this. Not after hearing the crack in Taehyung's voice. Not after seeing the betrayal in his eyes. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Jungkook whispered, almost to himself, like I was someone who could hurt him. Jimin didn't respond right away. When he finally did, his voice was softer. Because he loves you. That's the thing you keep forgetting. People don't break like that unless something inside them matters. The words hit hard. Jungkook stared at his reflection in the mirror. Smeared, distorted, not quite whole. His own face looked unfamiliar. And somewhere beneath the noise and guilt, something fierce began to build in his chest. I'm going after him. Jimin's gaze lifted, uncertain. Now? Jungkook grabbed his jacket, already halfway to the door. He thinks I chose you over him. He thinks I betrayed him. I won't let that be the last thing he remembers. The rain had stopped but left behind a world that felt washed raw. The pavement outside shimmered with streetlight reflections, and the cold cut through Jungkook's thin shirt the moment he stepped into the night. He didn't know where Taehyung had gone, but he knew where he might be. Taehyung's sanctuary had always been the abandoned rooftop above their old practice studio. A place hidden in the city's underbelly, where they used to sneak away and scream into the void when training became too much. Jungkook's chest tightened with memory as he ran through the side streets, the city blurring past in streaks of neon. When he reached the rusted staircase leading to the rooftop, he hesitated only a moment before climbing. The wind howled at this height, colder, crueler. And there he was. Taehyung sat on the edge, one leg dangling over the drop, his back to the entrance. His coat was soaked, clinging to him like shadows. He didn't turn when Jungkook approached, didn't speak, just stared out into the night, into the oblivion. You came, he said, voice brittle. I always will, Jungkook said quietly. A bitter laugh. You always say that, but you don't mean it. Jungkook stepped closer but stopped just behind him. What you saw earlier, me and Jimin, it wasn't what you think. It looked exactly like what I think, Taehyung said, turning slowly now. His eyes were red. Not from crying, Taehyung didn't cry easily, but from holding everything in too long. You whispered behind my back. You disappeared. You lied. Jungkook dropped to his knees beside him, soaking the knees of his jeans in freezing water. Because I was planning something. Something for you. Taehyung scoffed. No, Jungkook said firmly. Listen to me. It was supposed to be a surprise. A way to say sorry for all the times I shut down. For not noticing how much space had grown between us. He hesitated. For not telling you that I do love you. The words cracked open something between them. Taehyung stiffened. Slowly, his gaze met Jungkook's. Still, he repeated. Yes, Jungkook said, voice steady. I've always been afraid of what I feel. But I didn't want to lose you. So I tried to make something perfect. And I failed. Taehyung didn't answer. His lips trembled, just slightly. I'm not with Jimin, Jungkook added. He was helping me choose the painting. The one you mentioned you loved last winter. We tracked down the artist. It wasn't easy. Taehyung blinked. And the rooftop? The reason I've been disappearing? I've been setting it up. With lights. Your favorite wine. Music. He pulled something from his pocket, now damp but still intact. A small velvet box. Taehyung stared at it, breath caught. You were going to propose? He asked, voice breaking in disbelief. No, Jungkook opened the box slowly. Inside wasn't a ring, but a necklace. A tiny charm in the shape of a crescent moon. I was going to ask you to stay with me, no matter how messy I get, no matter how scared I am. Taehyung's lip quivered, the full weight of everything crashing into him. The anger, the jealousy, the shame, and under it all, the unspoken fear that he wasn't enough to be chosen. I thought I was losing you, he whispered. I thought I'd already lost you, Jungkook replied, his voice cracking now. And I didn't fight hard enough to stop it. There was a long, fragile pause. Then Taehyung moved, slowly, deliberately, and sat beside Jungkook, their shoulders brushing. No dramatic embrace, no cinematic kiss, just closeness. Real, trembling, human. I don't need perfection, Taehyung said quietly. I just need honesty. Jungkook nodded. Then I'll start now. I'm scared, Tae, of how deep this goes, of how much I need you. But I'd rather be terrified beside you than safe without you. Taehyung finally let out a breath. He leaned his head against Jungkook's shoulder, and for the first time that night, the world felt quiet. They didn't notice Jimin watching from the stairwell, face unreadable, one hand clenched around his phone. He hadn't meant to follow, but he'd heard everything. And somewhere deep inside, something inside him cracked too. Not because he had feelings for Jungkook, but because, for a moment he thought, maybe someone would plan something like that for him someday. And now he wasn't so sure. Down below, the city pulsed with life again. But up on that rooftop, beneath the scarred sky, 3 hearts beat with a rhythm far messier, more painful, and far more real than any love song ever written. Don't you dare lie to me now, Jimin said, slamming the apartment door shut behind him as he cornered Jungkook in the kitchen, voice cold and full of something unreadable. Jungkook looked up, halfway through setting a mug of tea on the counter, startled by the sudden aggression. Jimin, what are you talking about? Jimin crossed the room like a storm, his eyes burning, fists clenched at his sides. You stood on that rooftop and poured your soul out to him. And you acted like I didn't exist. Like none of it mattered. Jungkook blinked. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like, Jimin snapped. Tell me why you looked me in the eye for 3 weeks. 3 damn weeks. While we planned that whole surprise. While you leaned on me, trusted me, used me and said nothing. Jungkook's mouth opened, but no words came. That's what I thought, Jimin muttered bitterly, turning away. Wait. Jungkook reached for his arm, but Jimin pulled back like the touch burned. I wasn't in love with you, Jimin said, his voice breaking just slightly. Let's get that straight. This isn't about romance. It's about respect. It's about truth. I stood beside you, watched you fall apart over him, watched you question everything, and I thought maybe I mattered. Not like that, but enough to not be made invisible. Jungkook's guilt swelled like a tide. You do matter, Jimin. You mattered more than I ever said. I'm sorry. Tae was falling apart and I couldn't lose him. Yeah. Well, Jimin said, eyes narrowed. Maybe you lost more than you realized. There was silence then. Heavy. Final. Jimin turned and walked to the door. Where are you going? Jungkook asked, voice low. To remind myself who I am when I'm not just your sidekick, Jimin replied. And to stop pretending like I don't bleed when people step over me. He left without slamming the door this time. That made it worse. Jungkook stood in the kitchen for a long time, alone. The tea went cold. The silence wrapped around him, tight like a noose. For the first time in weeks, he didn't want to move, didn't want to plan, didn't want to fight, just wanted everything to stop spinning. But it wouldn't, because outside their fragile circle, a storm had already begun. Taehyung sat in the quiet of his room, watching the moonlight stretch across the ceiling like old scars. He hadn't slept. Not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jungkook's face, raw, pleading. And then Jimin's eyes, wounded and wordless, flickered like a ghost on the edge of his mind. He had forgiven Jungkook. But something still didn't sit right. It wasn't about the surprise. It wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was about trust. The way it could shatter without anyone meaning to break it. The way love could exist right alongside betrayal and still taste like honey. He hadn't spoken to Jimin since that night. He couldn't, because part of him hated what he had become. Jealous, insecure, desperate for a kind of certainty that didn't exist. His phone buzzed. He didn't move to answer. The screen lit up again. A text from an unknown number. "You think they told you everything?" Taehyung frowned. His chest tightened. "You think that rooftop was the real story?" He sat up slowly. The message wasn't signed. No name. Just words that dripped poison. His fingers hovered over the screen. "Who is this?" he typed. The reply came instantly. "Someone who knows what Jungkook didn't tell you." He stared at the message for a long time. Long enough that the silence in the room began to shift. Like the walls were listening. He wanted to throw the phone across the room. Wanted to scream. But instead he tapped once more. "Tell me." A few seconds passed. Then, "Come to the basement studio. Tonight. Alone." When Taehyung arrived, the building was mostly dark. The kind of empty that felt intentional. He found the door slightly ajar. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and something else, old secrets. The lights flickered. And then he saw her. She stood near the far wall. A producer he'd worked with once. Close to their label but not quite in it. Her expression was calm. Too calm. "You came," she said. Taehyung didn't answer. His fingers curled in his coat pocket. "What is this?" "I told you. The truth." "What truth?" he snapped. "You're not even part of this." She tilted her head. "You think you're at the center of this story, Taehyung. But you're not. None of you are." "Start talking," he growled. She walked toward him slowly, holding out a tablet. "Read this." On the screen was a series of emails. Between Jungkook and a name Taehyung didn't recognize. The tone was colder. Transactional. Payment confirmation. Schedule coordination. Confidentiality clause. His heart thundered in his chest. "You're lying." "Am I?" she said. Jungkook didn't plan that rooftop surprise by himself. He hired someone, me, and he said verbatim that it had to be good enough to repair a fracture. Taehyung's voice was a whisper. "What fracture?" "He told me about Jimin," she said. "Told me he'd slept with him. That it was a mistake. That he didn't love him back." The air left Taehyung's lungs like a punch to the chest. "No," he breathed. "You're lying. He begged me to help fix it before you found out. Thought if he gave you enough of a dream, you'd forget the nightmare." The tablet slipped from his fingers. He staggered back. Every breath was knives. The rooftop, the necklace, the apology, all a smokescreen. She stepped closer. "He never told you, because he knew you'd never forgive him." "I don't believe you." "You do," she said, voice low. "You already do. That's why you came." She turned and walked away. He stood there, shaking, alone in the silence that now screamed louder than any lie ever could. Jungkook was pacing the living room when Taehyung stormed in, eyes blazing. "Where is he?" Taehyung demanded. Jungkook froze. "Who?" "Don't act stupid," Taehyung hissed. "Did you sleep with him?" The silence that followed was instant and damning. "Taehyung, did you?" Jungkook's shoulders fell. "Once," he whispered. "A long time ago, before we got serious again. Before I even knew what I felt. Once," Taehyung shouted. "You lied to my face." "I didn't lie," Jungkook said desperately. "I hid it, because I was ashamed. Because it meant nothing. You don't get to decide what means nothing to me." Jungkook stepped forward. "It was a mistake. I was lost. He didn't mean anything." "Don't you dare reduce him like that," Taehyung snapped. "Don't you dare make this about your shame. You shattered both of us." And then tried to fix it with fairy lights and cheap forgiveness. "It wasn't cheap," Jungkook whispered. "It was everything I had." But Taehyung was already gone. This time, when the door slammed, it was final. And in the silence that followed, Jungkook finally collapsed. On the floor, in tears, not for being caught, but for realizing he'd broken the one thing he swore he'd never touch. Jimin didn't return his messages. Taehyung didn't come home, and the necklace still sat on the windowsill, gleaming like a promise never kept. Tomorrow would come, but tonight, nothing could be fixed, and maybe nothing ever would. The sun rose like a bruise across the city skyline, spilling over rooftops with that strange, half-hearted glow that didn't warm anything. The apartment was silent, except for the faint buzz of the fridge and the occasional creak of floorboards under pressure. Jungkook sat in the corner of the living room, eyes bloodshot, body curled into himself like a child in punishment. He hadn't slept, couldn't. Every time his eyelids shut, he saw Taehyung walking away again, jaw clenched, eyes wet with betrayal, and Jimin's cold silence burned louder than any scream. The necklace was still there on the windowsill, untouched, a mockery of his intentions, a ghost of what could have been. His phone vibrated. Again. He'd lost count how many times it had buzzed that morning. Manager Nim, his mother, a text from their label, someone from the stylists asking about his availability. But none of them were the name he wanted to see. Not Jimin, not Taehyung. He swiped all notifications away and stood slowly, knees aching from being folded too long. He hadn't even realized he'd been crying again until the collar of his shirt clung damp against his neck. The doorbell rang. Jungkook froze. Hope surged so fast it made him sick. He crossed the room with cautious urgency, hand hovering over the knob before he finally opened the door. But it wasn't Taehyung. It was Namjoon. The leader's eyes scanned his face in one quick sweep, and Jungkook saw the disappointment before a word even left his mouth. "You look like shit," Namjoon said simply. Jungkook stepped back wordlessly and let him in. The silence stretched as Namjoon stepped into the apartment and took in the scene. Messy blankets on the floor, untouched food, the necklace glinting in the light. Then he turned. "Tell me everything," he said, "because I'm tired of hearing half-truths from everyone else." Jungkook sank onto the couch. He didn't ask if Namjoon already knew. He probably did. Someone always knew. "I told Taehyung everything," he said after a long pause. "Except for the worst part." Namjoon didn't respond, just waited. "I told him about the surprise, about the dinner, the painting, the necklace. I told him I love him, and I do. God, I do. But," Namjoon cut in, voice steady, "but I didn't tell him I slept with Jimin. Once, months ago. It was before me and Taehyung got serious again, but after we started getting close again. It was in that in-between." Namjoon exhaled sharply through his nose. Not quite a sigh, not quite judgment. "And you didn't tell him because?" "Because I was afraid if I did, he wouldn't forgive me," Jungkook admitted. "Because he gets quiet when he's hurt. He shuts down. He doesn't scream. He leaves. And I didn't want him to leave. He left anyway." "I know." Namjoon sat down across from him. "And Jimin? He hates me now too. Did you ever love him?" "No," Jungkook said quickly. Too quickly. Then quieter. "Not like that. Not the way he needed me to. He was there when I was falling apart. And I think I let him become the thing I clung to when I should have just faced myself." Namjoon nodded once, slowly. "You were selfish." Jungkook flinched, but nodded. "I know. Do you want to fix this?" Jungkook looked up, eyes hollow. "I don't know if I can. That's not what I asked." There was a long silence before Jungkook said, "Yes." Namjoon stood. "Then start walking. No more hiding. No more rehearsed speeches. Go to them. Both of them. Let them scream. Let them hurt you. Because you hurt them." Jungkook swallowed hard. "And if they never forgive me?" Namjoon turned to the door. "Then you'll know you finally told the truth." Taehyung was in the studio, headphones on, staring at a screen of nothing. He hadn't pressed play in over an hour. He just sat there, the beat muted, the melody frozen. His mind in a storm he couldn't write through. His phone buzzed, again. Unknown number. Another message. Ready for the rest of the truth? He didn't reply. He deleted the last thread. Thought it was over. But it wasn't. Not even close. He grabbed his coat and left the room, ignoring the call from his manager, ignoring the assistant producer waving at him to come back. The cold air outside the building bit at his skin, but he didn't care. He needed to move, to breathe. He walked until the streets grew quieter, the crowd thinned, and he found himself in front of Jimin's apartment without even realizing it. He hesitated, then knocked. Jimin opened the door slowly, eyes ringed in shadows, expression unreadable. "You look like hell," Taehyung said. Jimin snorted softly. "Takes one to know one." Taehyung stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The air between them was thick, electric with everything unsaid. Jimin poured himself a glass of water but didn't offer one. "You heard what happened," Taehyung said after a long silence. "I did. You didn't tell me." Jimin didn't turn. "Because it wasn't mine to tell. It involved you." "Yeah, and I hated myself for it. Every second after." Taehyung's voice cracked. "Why did you do it?" "I was hurting. He was lonely. And I thought, maybe he was trying to love me. Maybe he didn't know the difference between need and affection." Taehyung sat on the couch, exhaling sharply. "He told me it was just once." Jimin nodded. "It was. But it broke everything anyway." Silence again. "I want to hate you," Taehyung whispered. "I won't stop you. But I don't." Jimin turned, finally. His eyes shimmered, but he didn't cry. "I don't hate you either. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel anymore," Taehyung said. "Then feel all of it," Jimin replied. "There's no right way through this." A knock came at the door. They both froze. Jimin didn't move. Taehyung did. He opened it. Jungkook stood there. He didn't speak at first. Then he did. "I was a coward," he said. "I thought I was protecting you by hiding the truth. I thought love meant giving you everything but the ugly parts. I was wrong, and I don't know what's left of us, or if you want anything to be. But I'm here now, and I'll stay until you throw me out." Taehyung stared at him for a long, quiet moment. Then he stepped back, letting him in. Jungkook's eyes flicked to Jimin, then to the floor. "I'm sorry," he said. "You said that already," Jimin replied. "I know. I'll keep saying it until it means something." "I don't need your apology," Jimin said. "I need you to figure out who you are without dragging people into your confusion." Jungkook nodded. "I will." The three of them sat in the same room. Not enemies, not friends, just broken pieces of something once beautiful, scattered across a floor they no longer knew how to stand on. Time passed. No one moved. And in the silence, forgiveness began. Slowly, painfully, imperfectly, not as a gift, but as a decision. To not run anymore. To not lie anymore. To let themselves be seen, even when the truth was ugly. And somewhere, deep beneath the weight of betrayal and shame, love stirred. Small, wounded, but alive. The studio was dark except for the pale glow of city lights leaking in through the high windows. Rain drizzled against the glass, soft but insistent, like a heartbeat no one wanted to acknowledge. Jungkook sat on the edge of the mixing table, head bowed, the sleeves of his hoodie soaked from the rain. Across from him, Taehyung stood with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor as if the truth might be buried in the wood grain. "I don't know why you asked me to come here," Taehyung said finally, voice like cold steel barely holding its shape. "Because I couldn't say what I needed to say in that apartment," Jungkook replied quietly. "Not with Jimin there. Not when I couldn't even look you in the eye without choking on guilt." Taehyung raised his head slowly, jaw clenched. "Then speak, before I walk out again." Jungkook took a breath. Not a deep one. He wasn't sure his lungs would cooperate, but enough to get the words moving. "I'm not going to ask for your forgiveness again," he said. "I already used that word so many times it's lost its meaning. I came here to give you the truth. All of it. Not just the parts that make me look better." Taehyung said nothing. "I was lonely," Jungkook began, voice trembling. "Not because you weren't there. You were. You were always there. But I didn't know how to reach for you without feeling like I was being needy. I told myself I could carry the weight alone. I told myself I didn't need help. That was the first lie. He stood, began pacing slowly. And Jimin, he saw through that. He didn't press. He didn't ask me to open up. He just stayed. And I mistook comfort for connection. I thought, if I let him in, maybe I'd stop feeling like I was drowning. Taehyung flinched, but he didn't speak. I didn't love him, Jungkook said. But I didn't stop him. And I didn't stop myself. That was the second lie. The rain was louder now. The city below blurred in streaks of light and water. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time lapse. But then I didn't tell you. I planned the surprise to bury it. I tried to wrap a lie in pretty paper and hand it to you like it was healing. That was the third lie. Taehyung exhaled shakily. And when you screamed, Jungkook continued. When you finally let all of that fury out, I felt relieved. Because part of me thought finally he knows. Now it's not a secret anymore. But that was cowardice, not catharsis. He stopped pacing and looked directly at Taehyung. You deserved more than the clean version. More than a necklace and fairy lights. You deserved my worst parts too. And I was too scared to show you. Taehyung's voice, when it came, was hoarse. Why now? Why bring me here just to rip open wounds we barely managed to close? Because there's something else, Jungkook said. Taehyung stared, every muscle tense. Jungkook reached into his bag and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. He held it out. I wasn't the only one keeping secrets, he said. There's something you need to see. Taehyung took the envelope reluctantly. His fingers trembled as he opened it, eyes scanning the single page inside. Then everything changed. He went still. Completely still. His lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. His knees buckled a little and he caught himself on the edge of the mixing table, breath catching in his throat. What is this? He asked, voice hollow. It's a letter, Jungkook said. From Jimin. He left it at my apartment. I didn't read it at first. I thought it was for me. But it wasn't. Taehyung swallowed. Hard. He read aloud. Tae, I thought about telling you 100 times. And every time I imagined your face if I did, I couldn't do it. Not because I didn't want to be honest. But because I knew I'd lose you forever. And maybe I should. Maybe I deserve that. But here's what I never told you. I've been in love with you since that night in Busan when we stayed up watching the tide and you told me you'd never be anyone's second choice. You said it with that conviction you always have, like it was the simplest truth in the world. And then I watched you fall for someone who couldn't even see you clearly through his own mess. And I told myself it wasn't my place. That you were happy and that was all that mattered. So I stepped aside. But when Jungkook and when it happened, it wasn't because I wanted to steal him from you. I just wanted, for a second, to stop feeling like a shadow in both your lives. You deserve to know. Even if it means losing you. I just wanted you to know that at least once I was brave enough to say it. Jimin. The room fell silent. Taehyung lowered the letter. Then he crumpled it in his fist and turned away. I can't, he gasped. I can't handle this. Jungkook reached out. Tae, don't, Taehyung snapped, spinning to face him. Don't you dare touch me right now. I'm sorry. I don't want your apologies. I don't want Jimin's love letters. I don't want any of it. But you came here, Jungkook said softly. You let me talk. Taehyung's eyes burned. Because I thought maybe there was a version of us still worth saving. There is. You don't get to decide that. Then decide it, Jungkook said, stepping closer. You want the truth? I'm not okay. I haven't been okay since the day I realized I was in love with someone I didn't know how to hold. You scared the hell out of me, Tae. Because you saw through me. You saw the parts one wanted to hide. And I broke everything because I didn't think I deserved someone who saw me that clearly. Taehyung trembled. You didn't just break me. You broke him too. I know. Taehyung's voice cracked. And now what? You want us all to just forgive each other and move on. No, Jungkook said. I want you to be honest. I want us to be honest. Even if it means we walk away. Silence. Long. Tense. Then Taehyung whispered, I loved you so much I forgot who I was without you. Jungkook's heart twisted. I kept waiting for you to choose me, Taehyung said. Not just say it. Choose me. And when you didn't, when I found out everything. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for years and suddenly someone pulled the air away. Jungkook's voice was barely a whisper. I choose you. I always did. I just didn't know how to say it without ruining everything. Well, Taehyung said, you ruined it anyway. Jungkook smiled, a sad, hollow thing. I did. And still, Taehyung didn't move. He stared at him, breathing hard, fists clenched. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the necklace. He held it up. "I don't want this," he said. Jungkook's face crumpled. "But I'm not throwing it away either," Taehyung added. He set it gently on the table. "Maybe one day I'll be able to wear it. Not because I forgive you, but because I finally forgave myself for not seeing it all sooner." Jungkook nodded. Taehyung walked past him, paused at the door. "Don't follow me this time," he said. "If I come back, it'll be because I choose to." Jungkook didn't argue, didn't beg. He just watched him leave, the door clicking shut behind him like the final note in a long, painful song. Outside, the rain had stopped, but inside everything still ached. And yet, for the first time, the pain felt honest. It felt like the beginning of something that could eventually become healing. Even if it took years. Even if it never looked the same. Even if all that remained was the truth.